Good day, everyone. So my name's Ewan McCash. I'm the farmer, oyster farming down at Bateman's Bay, and founder of Smart Oysters. Just quick my background, I've been farming for 12 years. I did a marine science degree at university. I was interested in aquaculture. My father was also interested in what I was doing. He wanted to leave his job. Kept asking me, should we do prawn farming, fish farming? And then one day he said, how about oysters? And I said, yep, oysters are a sustainable product. We don't have to feed them, treat them. They go naturally in commercial quantities. South Coast is a great area for it. A week later, he rang me up and said he quit his job and bought an oyster farm. So that's how we got into it. So since that time, can I be orientated here?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm here on behalf of Smart Oysters. It's a simple solution for complex farming systems, which in terms of oyster farming, I think farmers themselves think it's a lot more simple than what they are actually doing. But when you actually start sort of pulling it out of their head, what the scheduling, the grading, the different leases, the cultivation methods, there's quite a lot going on in an oyster farm. Designed with oysters in mind, it's a very versatile and adaptable system, really due to the genius of Philip Browning, I'll talk later. And if you've got potentially other uses for it, challenge us. Yeah. How do I get that to play? There we go, so I'll just get that in a loop. But I mean, what I want to talk about is from a farming perspective. As I said, started farming 12 years ago. As soon as I hit the farm, I was a young guy, I was fairly naive. I seen two older people running the farm. I thought, yep, I'll work twice as hard and I'll grow twice as many oysters and make twice as much money. That wasn't the case. We've had to develop new cultivation methods, invest in new production methods, but we've got them. That technology's there. So once I'd done that, I then realised I wasn't getting enough money from the market, so I've had to develop a marketing company, Signature Oysters, to sell my oysters for 25 to 30% more. And along the way, I've had oyster bars as well. But what was happening is that every time I did something other than oyster farm, the farming suffered. Our production went down, the quality went down. It basically, even though I become an expert at farming on my farm, I also had become so ingrained in the business. The question was asked: how do we get Ewan out of the business? How do we get him off the farm without compromising the actual farm quality? So this is what Smart Oysters was, a solution to that problem. It was the missing link. It's been 7 months now that I've been trialling Smart Oysters on my farm. We now, in that time, I've managed to, we actually are producing, this year we're producing 3 times more, or close to 3 times more oysters than I ever have before. I'm only there 3 days a week. My farm manager is only there 4 days a week. Everything's graded on schedule. We're going to have the best quality, most productive year on record, and it's because we're using this sort of cloud-based farming management systems. And I guess it's the key to scaling, I think, and Philip will talk further at this, it's particularly with oysters, my farm is unique. It's on the Clyde River, it's got different cultivation methods. It's quite a hard thing to do, is to get it out of my head and onto this system. That's what we've done. But I'll hand over to Philip now, and he'll take it from there.
Broken leg when you're just starting to, a business starting to take off is not a good thing. As you were saying, oyster farming is actually quite a complex endeavour. It's also an age-old industry, as many aquaculture industries are. And most of the knowledge in the industry is actually held in the farmer's head, or, dare I say it, on a whiteboard in the shed. And Ros Harvey calls it the whiteboard problem, and we've actually solved that for the oyster industry in a very unique way, and that can apply to many other parts of the aquaculture industry. Why oysters? Because in many senses, the most complex, challenging environments throw up the toughest problems, and if you can solve those, you can solve many things across many industries. So so basically my aspect is I met Ewan 2.5 years ago, and I challenged Ewan, and I said, well, he actually said, oh, my oysters are pretty good, and I said, prove it to me. And my first degree was a hydrogeology degree, and I used to travel down there field trips. So I was essentially saying to Ewan, your product, increasingly, data will be as valuable as the physical product. So Smart Oysters is actually about that journey, and the prediction of 2.5 years ago, me telling Ewan that data will be a very valuable asset in agriculture and in aquaculture. So data becomes something that proves provenance, traceability, and basically Ewan's challenge to me was, can you use data so that I can get a better price for my oysters? And that's what we're doing. So let me just go on. Oops. So the data in the industry is actually in the head of the farmers or on the whiteboard. That's not scalable. It is also not able, so in terms of farm scaling or cross-generational handover, all those sorts of things, it's near on impossible. Via Smart Oysters, effectively what we're doing is we're capturing the data about the stock and the farm practice. It is that simple. And we're digitising the stock, and we're digitising and creating a very simple, easy mobile app for the farmer to capture their data about what they do. The intellectual property of a farmer is what's in their head, and a oyster farmer works out what works. So Ewan spent 12 years in the Clyde River working out how to get a good oyster out of the Clyde River. That's unique, and that's what makes Ewan's oysters as good as Ewan's oysters. Todd, up the mid-north coast, he's spent X years working out how to get a good oyster out of his estuary. That is his intellectual property and what's important. So in effect, we're capturing the farm practice. That is what you do, how you know, why you know what you do. That's recorded in a schedule. So that's the intellectual property of a farmer. We're digitising the stock. So in the manner in which we're capturing the data, we're able to record exactly what, where, all the movements. We'll be basically placing both those two things represent the base data that can then go up the supply chain. So you can now start talking your story in a digital way. So you've got the data to go and tell your story from traceability, provenance, and so on. So basically, very simply, for the very first time, the oyster industry is now investable because we are digitising the stock, and Ewan and many others can now rapidly expand their businesses. And so what's that mean? That means for investors, for banks, when they've historically looked at the oyster industry, it's been basically a tin shed, ute, and you lease Crown land. So they won't touch you. So banks are now starting to understand the being able to securitise and digitise stock and create security over that. So Phil from CommBank, love to talk with you further. For RFDC and Patrick, you're now able to actually invest into crops and do research at crop level all over the place. You can create basically a virtual farm, and you can sell the oysters and create a self-funding industry development program. Love to talk with you further. So out of complexity comes challenge, but also if you have an open mind and collaborate, you can do amazing things. And we have created this over 2 years, and we're now being bombarded by Skype calls from US and everywhere. So thank you for your time.